In this part, I will present to you the answers to your Quarter 2 QA Reviewer practice sheet number 1. In this activity, you were given 3 simple situations that you can read and answer based on the given generalization question, which reads, how can we resolve conflicts proactively? Now, for the situations, number 1, Student A, Annie feels sad about her unsubmitted task. She procrastinates a lot, thus she crams when deadlines are near. One day, she realizes that she must do something to uplift her situation. So, she ends up calling the school guidance counselor to seek for an advice. Number 2, Student B. Bob is used to be a diligent student. When he met some friends who play online games, his attitude changed a lot. After the core day conversation, he was grounded because of his failing marks in 5 subjects. He knew in himself that he could do better, but he let online games consume him. After that event, he commits to himself that he needs to bounce back. Number 3, Student C. Cham had a rift with her best friend. She knew that she was to blame for the misunderstanding, but her pride is stopping her from making amends. One day, she was misjudged by her parents for doing something that she didn't do. She tried to explain, but her parents didn't listen to her. She felt so bad after what happened to her. After a few hours, her parents talked to her and said sorry for the misunderstanding. After that incident, something came up on her mind. The next day, she said sorry to her best friend. She now realized how it feels to be misunderstood. Now it's time for us to write our generalization based on the given question. We can use the prompt, we can resolve conflicts proactively by. So here is the sample answer. As you can see, there are 6 sentences used in answering the generalization question. Sentence number 1 is the claim. Sentences 2, 3, and 4 are the pieces of textual evidence used to support the claim. And sentences 5 and 6 are the reason statements that discusses the connection of the textual evidence we use to support our claim. Let's read our generalization. We can resolve conflicts proactively by having a positive attitude and taking an action after reflecting on the situation. Just like in the first situation, when Annie realized that she needs help, she called the guidance counselor. In the second situation, Bob committed to himself to bounce back after realizing online games distracted him from his academics. Finally, in the third situation, Cham apologized to her best friend when she realized how it felt to be misunderstood. All of these show that looking into the situation gives us time to reflect and recollect ourselves on how we can address it. This means that to resolve conflicts proactively, we need to see beyond the situation and take that positive attitude in coming up with a proactive and non-violent course of action. In this part, I will present to you the answer to the generalization question in your second quarter guided generalization activity. I will not discuss anymore the responses or the answers to the specific questions given in each text. Rather, we are going to focus on how the generalization is formed based on the question given in this GG activity. But before we do that, let's revisit first the 3 texts assigned in your GG activity. For text number 1, we have there's a teenager in the house. Text number 2, how my brother Leon brought home a wife. And text number 3, we have the sheep. Let's revisit the kind of conflict present in each text. For text number 1, we have the parent and child misrelation or miscommunication conflict. For text number 2, we have Maria's personal anxiety. So this is more of a man versus self conflict. And text number 3, the sheep were arguing about the color of the pasture, which led into a war. So this is more of a man versus man or character versus character type of conflict. Now, how is the conflict resolved in each text that you read? Let's revisit some bits of answers here before we process and form our generalization. For text number 1, the conflict was resolved by the mother who continued to understand the context or the situation of the son. The parent also planned to send the son to a new school. For text number 2, Maria continued to control her emotions, and eventually she was able to adjust to the new environment. For text number 3, they tried to call a judge to give them the verdict on the color of the pasture. But the verdict was not as proactive because it only led for the sheep to kill each other. But later in the story, the sheep without the sunglasses was able to reconcile and find out the true color of the pasture, given that he didn't let the sunglasses block his sight in order for him to realize the correct and true color of the pasture, which the other sheep didn't realize to begin with. So let's try to form now how the conflict in each text is resolved. So for text number 1, the parent had to go through a tough decision-making process for him to realize that it's better for his son to be transferred to a distant school. Again, that's for him to be taught of the values on responsibility and self-discipline. It's a tough sacrifice for the parent to do that, but that didn't leave her any choice but to resort to that kind of decision because that's what she thought is the best and the helpful decision in order for his son to grow as a disciplined person. In text number 2, Maria diverted her attention or her apprehensions rather to some of the things that she experienced while they were traveling going to Leon's house or Leon's place. And while she was in the course of reflecting on his worries and apprehensions, eventually that led her to share all these anxieties to Leon and being able to talk about the worries and ease her feelings. And in text number 3, the sheep without the sunglasses was able to reflect and decide on the real color of the pasture by not letting the sunglasses block his sight or block his perception of the color of the pasture. And eventually that spared him from the killing, from the war that went on because the other sheep were consumed by their arguments, by the issue on who is telling the true color of the pasture. Now, we ask, what is the common idea that we have observed in the ways these conflicts are dealt with or resolved? So we have 3 common ideas here. Number 1, all of the responses or all of the ways the resolutions made in these texts all started with a thought in mind. Number 2, this thought went, of course, a thinking process which was leveled up to reflecting and analyzing. This can be contextualized in examining and looking into the situation that the parties are involved into, and this is being reflected on how they can better address the conflict or better address the issue. And finally, number 3, after this thinking process that was leveled up to reflecting and analyzing measures or course of actions were taken based on the fruit of the reflection made. So this means that before they come up with a solution, they first examined the whole context of the problem, and then right after that, they were able to come up with a proactive and non-violent solution. Now, let us form these common ideas in a generalization. So here in the generalization, um, we based our generalization on the given unit insight question, which reads, how do you arrive at a proactive resolution to a conflict? So as you can observe here, there are 5 statements or sentences used in writing the generalization. The first sentence, the one in red, is the claim. And the following sentences, numbers 2, 3, and 4, are the textual evidence. And again, the use or the purpose of this is to support the claim given. And the final sentence, sentence number 5, is the reason that ties and discusses the connection of our chosen textual evidence in supporting our claim. So let's read our answer. I can arrive at a proactive resolution to a conflict by examining the situation and reflecting on a positive, non-violent course of action. In the first text, this is seen when the mother needed to do a great decision of transferring his son to a distant school to teach him lessons on responsibility and self-discipline. In the second text, this is felt after Maria recollected herself and shared all her anxieties to Leon to ease her worries. In the third text, this is evident when the sheep with no sunglasses decided not to engage in the war since he knew the real color of the pasture. These pieces of textual evidence imply that to resolve conflicts proactively, I am reminded to consider the context of the problem and balance the course of action to take in order to come up with a positive and non-violent resolution that is best for all the parties involved. So that's the answer to the guided generalization question. How do you arrive at a proactive resolution to a conflict? So as you can observe here, you don't need to construct a lengthy answer to respond to the given generalization question. You can respond as short as this one, wherein there are only 5 sentences used in writing the answer. Just make sure to always remember the CER elements that should be present in your answer. And again, if you look into the pattern that I used here in answering the question, I started with a claim. That's a one-liner answer. That's a direct answer to the given question. And then I followed it with 3 sentences that capture the chosen textual evidence coming from the 3 texts given in this activity. And finally, I have my last sentence, the 5th one. This is for me to discuss further the connection of the chosen textual evidence in supporting my claim. That ends this video discussion on the answers to your quarter 2 guided generalization activity. Good luck and give your best in the upcoming examinations.